The stars above were quiet, scattered like frozen sparks across endless black. Below them, the planet that once gave life to billions rested in complete silence. Earth was no longer the home anyone remembered. Its oceans had dried into cracked deserts. The proud cities that once touched the clouds now lay buried under dust and sand, their towers nothing but fossils of a forgotten age. The wind that swept across those lands carried no voices, no laughter, no footsteps. It was a dead world, holding memories no one alive had ever seen. A long time ago, before the silence, Earth had been the center of everything. Humanity had reached the stars, built cities on moons, and touched new worlds. But with growth came arrogance, and from the deep void came something that ended everything, a war that no one truly won. The enemies that came were not monsters of chaos, but intelligent beings, cold and calculating. They wanted Earth not for its people, but for what it represented, a world rich in energy, culture, and history. The humans fought with courage, but courage was not enough. The skies turned red for years, and the ground burned until it could burn no more. When hope was gone, humanity made a painful choice. They built the Arks of Dawn, massive ships large enough to carry the last of their kind across galaxies. Each ship carried families, engineers, scientists, and children, all chosen to keep humanity alive. As they rose into the dark sky, the people looked down one last time. The planet that had given them everything was fading away, covered in fire and smoke. That was the last time any human saw Earth with their own eyes. Centuries turned into millennia. The arks traveled across stars, searching for places to call home. Some found new worlds and settled. Others disappeared forever into black holes or strange systems where light never reached. Over generations, people changed. They adapted to new atmospheres, new gravities, new skies. They built languages that no longer sounded like the ones spoken on Earth. Their technology grew beyond imagination. Some could move mountains with machines smaller than a hand. Others learned to live among stars as if they were part of them. After thousands of years, most humans forgot their origin. Earth became a legend, a bedtime story told to children. Some said it was a paradise lost because of human greed. Others believed it never existed at all. Only a few historians and old families still whispered the truth, keeping the memory alive in secret vaults called the Terran memory archives. These archives carried recordings, photos, and voices from the old world, faint echoes of oceans, the sound of rain, the image of blue skies, and stories of a world where everyone once belonged. In a quiet colony built on the edge of a golden star, one such archive was guarded by a small group of scholars. They called themselves the Keepers of Dawn. Their only duty was to protect human history from being erased by time. Among the old records, there was a broken data crystal, half corrupted, its symbols unreadable. No one paid much attention to it, believing it was another relic from a forgotten war. But deep inside that crystal, the coordinates of Earth were still stored, hidden under layers of encryption. One evening, while scanning old data fragments, a young researcher noticed something strange. The crystal emitted a faint signal that pulsed in rhythm like a heartbeat. The pattern didn't match any known data structure. Curious, the researcher began decoding it. It took weeks of sleepless nights running old translation programs that hadn't been used for centuries. And then, the impossible happened. The map unfolded before his eyes. There it was, the long-lost orbit of Earth, still recorded in perfect precision. It wasn't destroyed. It still existed. At first, the discovery was kept quiet. The researcher showed it only to his mentor, who wept in silence after seeing the data. They ran every test imaginable, comparing stellar movements and gravitational shifts. Every calculation confirmed it. The planet of origin, the cradle of humanity, was alive. It wasn't the same, but it hadn't vanished. Something, or someone, had restored it. The message spread quickly among the inner circles of the Keepers. Within months, word reached the colonies across human space. The news moved like a current through the galaxy. For some, it was a miracle. For others, a dangerous temptation. People asked questions. If Earth still existed, who lived there now? And if someone did they know humanity once called it home? Probes were sent through the vast darkness. Tiny, silent travelers built to hide their presence. Years passed before they returned. When the first images appeared, the sight left everyone speechless. The planet was green again, covered in forests and oceans. But it wasn't natural. Structures alien in design covered continents. Massive towers of silver and black pierced the clouds, pulsing with light. The surface looked alive, almost breathing. It became clear. Earth was no longer under human rule. The keepers studied the symbols found on the towers, and recognition struck them like lightning. The same race that once attacked humanity 500,000 years ago now ruled their ancestral home. These aliens had taken Earth as their sacred ground, worshipping it as the world they conquered and claimed. What was once the heart of humanity had become a monument to their victory. Across human space, emotions erupted: anger, disbelief, sadness. The news reached worlds so far apart that it took months for responses to come back. But when they did, they carried one shared thought: they could not let this stand. Humanity, after all its evolution and separation, still had one soul, and that soul remembered where it came from. For the first time in hundreds of thousands of years, a message was broadcast across the galaxy. It was short, written in the old language of Earth: "The children of Terra will return." From that moment, silence turned to purpose. The leaders of every major human world gathered in a floating city above a white dwarf star. It was the first time in history that all human nations, now scattered across thousands of systems, stood together. The oldest among them spoke of duty and bloodlines. The youngest spoke of justice and legacy. There were disagreements, debates, and fears, but no one denied the truth. They could not remain scattered forever while their home remained in the hands of their old enemies. Ships began to move. Fleets long thought to be ceremonial suddenly powered up their engines. For decades, engineers, scientists, and commanders worked side by side, uniting their technologies. It was a sight the universe had never seen. Humanity, once broken and wandering, now awakening as one. On every world, children were taught new songs about their lost home. On every ship, the image of Earth, blue and glowing, was painted on the hull. The ancient flag, with its faded colors of green and blue, flew again for the first time in hundreds of thousands of years. Humanity had remembered who they were, but for now they could only prepare. They had the location, but no understanding of what awaited them. The aliens who took Earth had built entire empires by then. They had changed its surface and filled its sky with their machines. Yet none of that mattered. To the scattered descendants of humanity, it was not about conquest, it was about return. About setting right the story of who they were and where they came from. As the Keepers of Dawn stood before the Great Assembly, one of them spoke softly, almost like a prayer. "We are not ghosts of the past," they said. "We are the living memory of Earth, and one day we will walk its soil again." And so began the great preparation. It would take centuries to unite the fleets, to build the kind of ships that could cross the endless dark once more. But in every corner of human space, hearts burned with a shared fire. They would not forget. They would not forgive. And when the day came, the sky over Earth would know them again, not as exiles, but as its children returning home. When the truth about Earth's survival spread across human space, it shook every world to its core. For many, it was like hearing a voice from the dead. The stories their ancestors had whispered for generations were suddenly real. The lost home they sang about in old songs wasn't just a dream. It was out there, waiting. In the great domed cities of distant planets, people gathered in silence as images of Earth appeared on holographic screens. The sight was beautiful and painful all at once. The familiar blue and green colors were gone, replaced by strange hues of silver, gold, and emerald light. The oceans still shimmered, but their shape had changed, as if the planet itself had been sculpted by another hand. Towering alien structures rose from its continents, glowing with energy that seemed alive. It was Earth, yet not Earth anymore. Everywhere, emotions ran high. Elders who had grown up listening to bedtime stories about the cradle of humanity wept openly. Children stared in wonder, asking what kind of place it had been before it was taken. Some people felt pride that the home of humanity still existed at all, even if it was no longer theirs. Others burned with quiet anger that it had been stolen and changed by those who once brought humanity to its knees. The Council of Worlds, made up of leaders from every major human colony, called for an emergency gathering. It was held in a massive orbital city known as the Halo of Unity, a place built long ago as a monument to peace. But that day, peace was the last thing on anyone's mind. Representatives arrived from hundreds of worlds, some wearing the sleek armor of military fleets, others in robes of learning, others in simple clothing that spoke of humble lives. Yet when they stood together, one truth united them all. They were all descendants of Earth. Inside the shining halls of the Halo, the air vibrated with debate. Voices clashed like thunder. Some argued that returning to Earth would be too dangerous. 500,000 years had passed. What if the aliens who lived there were beyond their strength? Others said it didn't matter. If we can travel between galaxies, one voice said, we can return to our home. The oldest members reminded everyone that their ancestors didn't flee because they were weak. They fled to survive. And now, after growing stronger, it was time to go back. But there was another question, a harder one. What if Earth no longer wanted them? For centuries, humans had changed. They had merged with new worlds, adapted to alien atmospheres, and even developed different physical traits. Some could breathe thin air, others could survive heat that would have once killed them. They were all still human, but they were no longer the same as their ancestors. What if the planet they called home could no longer recognize them? Despite the fears, the Council made its decision. The vote was nearly unanimous. Humanity would return, but this time not as lost wanderers searching for shelter. They would return as the rightful heirs of Earth. The news spread like wildfire. Across the colonies, factories that had been silent for centuries came alive again. Shipyards glowed as workers began building enormous vessels, larger and more advanced than anything ever seen before. Entire cities worked together, donating resources, technology, and even their brightest minds to the cause. People didn't call it a war. Not yet. They called it the Great Return. To them, it wasn't about destroying anyone. It was about finding home again, about setting history right. Still, deep inside, everyone knew there would be a price to pay. In the skies of the Andara system, one of the largest shipyards in human space floated like a silver moon. Thousands of construction drones swarmed around giant skeletons of warships. Engineers and builders worked side by side, sometimes sleeping only a few hours before returning to their stations. The ships they were building weren't just machines, they were symbols. Each one carried an emblem of Earth's old oceans and continents carved into its hull. It reminded everyone of what they were fighting for. While the fleets were being built, scientists began studying everything about the alien species that had taken Earth. Records from the ancient war were scattered, but fragments remained. They discovered that the aliens had been powerful even back then, tall beings of energy and flesh, their technology fueled by light drawn directly from stars. They had once treated humanity as primitive creatures, useful only for labor and study. No one knew how much stronger they had become over the 500,000 years that followed. But humanity wasn't the same either. Their technology had grown beyond what the old invaders could have imagined. They had learned to bend time to cross galaxies, to build machines that could think and feel. The once broken species had turned into something extraordinary. A civilization spread across thousands of suns, all connected by a shared memory of where they came from. Amid all this, a quiet movement began spreading among ordinary people. Artists started painting old images of Earth, the blue skies, the forests, the gentle rain. Singers composed songs about homecoming, their voices echoing through space stations. Parents told their children that one day they would stand on the ground their ancestors once called home. The story of Earth had turned from myth into a living dream. On one distant planet, a group of explorers began preparing for the first scouting mission. They weren't soldiers, but historians and scientists, chosen to find the truth about Earth's condition before the fleets arrived. Their ships were small, designed to move unseen. It took them years to travel across the endless black, jumping between stars, staying hidden from alien sensors. When they finally entered the solar system, everyone on the mission fell silent. They saw the sun shining just as their ancestors had described. They saw the outlines of Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. And then there it was, Earth floating in the darkness like a jewel. Its clouds shimmered, its continents glowed faintly with green light. But it didn't look like any human remembered. There were no visible cities, no old landmarks. The planet seemed both ancient and new. The explorers sent out thousands of observation drones. The images they received were both beautiful and terrifying. The aliens had transformed Earth into a living structure, forests and metal intertwined. Oceans pulsed with energy that seemed artificial. And at the center of every continent stood immense towers shaped like crystals, radiating power into the sky. What shocked them most wasn't the technology. It was what they found deep beneath the surface. Buried under the alien architecture were fragments of old human cities, preserved like fossils. There were ruins of glass buildings, the remains of bridges, even half-buried statues that had once stood in parks. The aliens hadn't destroyed everything. They had built their world on top of humanity's. When the explorers transmitted their findings back, the response was immediate. The Council of Worlds declared that the evidence was undeniable. Earth was not only alive, it was still carrying the bones of its creators. The aliens had turned it into a symbol of their dominance. They had made Earth their holy world, a reminder to their kind that they had once defeated humanity. That revelation changed everything. What began as a hopeful return now became a mission of justice. The descendants of Earth couldn't accept that their home had been turned into a trophy. They didn't want to destroy. It wasn't about revenge. But they couldn't allow the symbol of their people to remain in alien hands any longer. The fleets continued to grow. Ships from every system arrived at the assembly points. They came in all shapes and sizes. Sleek scouts, massive carriers, ships built from living metal that could heal themselves. Every vessel bore a single mark, a circle of blue surrounding a green spiral, the old emblem of Earth. People across the colonies began calling themselves Terrans again. It was a word that hadn't been spoken seriously in hundreds of thousands of years, but when it returned, it felt right. They were no longer divided by planets or systems. They were all children of Terra, united by the same purpose. Before the departure, a ceremony was held. It wasn't grand or filled with speeches. Instead, millions of people simply stood together in silence, facing the direction of the old sun. Lights from thousands of worlds shimmered in space like candles. In that silence, everyone shared one thought: we are going home. And so the preparations continued. The weapons were tested, the engines roared, and the navigation paths were aligned. The fleets would take years to reach Earth, but to those who were born among the stars, waiting meant nothing. They had already waited 500,000 years. A few more decades were nothing compared to the moment when humanity would once again see their world rise beneath their feet. Somewhere, deep in the archives of the Halo of Unity, an ancient recording played one final time. It was the sound of rain falling on stone. Captured before humanity's exile, the sound echoed softly through the halls as if the planet itself was calling to its lost children. Everyone knew what it meant. The time of exile was ending. The journey home had already begun. The years that followed were filled with a kind of energy humanity hadn't felt in ages. It was as if the entire galaxy of human worlds had taken a deep breath together, preparing for the moment they had been waiting for across 500,000 years. The Great Return was no longer just a dream or a plan. It had become reality. In every corner of human space, from shining core worlds to faraway colonies built on frozen moons, life changed. People spoke differently. There was purpose in their voices, light in their eyes. For so long they had lived apart, focused only on survival or exploration, but now every human heart beat for the same goal: to go home. Massive construction rings circled stars, glowing as they built ships larger than anything before. From the outside, they looked like floating continents, each one a city with its own atmosphere, forests, and seas. These weren't just machines, they were worlds built to travel. Some could sustain millions of people on board. Others were smaller, fast as light itself, built for battle or protection. Together they were called the Return Fleet. Every ship carried its own mark, a symbol drawn from ancient Earth. The oceans, the mountains, the rising sun. Old songs once forgotten were brought back and played in every port. Children were taught how their ancestors had lived under real skies, how they once felt rain, how they built everything from stone and metal with their own hands. It gave them pride, a reason to believe that what they were doing wasn't just for glory, it was for identity. The fleets were divided into waves. The first would move ahead as scouts and protectors. The second would carry settlers, engineers, and historians. The last would bring the great arcs, the moving cities where millions of humans would travel together toward their homeworld. The training that began across human space was unlike anything seen before. Soldiers learned how to fight not just with weapons, but with machines that could think beside them. Pilots trained for years to handle ships that could bend space-time. Engineers worked day and night, fine-tuning engines that could travel between galaxies in a single leap. But beneath all the science and preparation, there was a quiet understanding among them all. This wasn't just about fighting. It was about returning with dignity. For many, the thought of seeing Earth again stirred emotions they couldn't explain. They didn't know what it would look like up close, what it would feel like to stand on its soil. Most had never even touched real ground before. They lived in stations and domes, but they all imagined it. Blue skies, green lands, the scent of rain, the sound of waves. It was something deep, something that called to them in their dreams. As the fleets came closer to completion, the skies above countless worlds were filled with light. When the engines of the great ships ignited for the first time, the ground trembled. People came out of their homes just to watch the glow in the heavens. They knew that those ships were carrying not just weapons and machines, but their entire history, their pride, and the spirit of humanity. On one quiet night in a city orbiting a red star, the leaders of the Great Return gathered in a circular chamber. The walls were transparent, showing a breathtaking view of the surrounding stars. They stood there in silence, looking out at the ships being prepared below. No one spoke for a long time. They didn't need to. They all knew what was coming. Finally, one of them said softly, "We were once driven away. Now we return not as conquerors, but as children coming home." The word spread across every communication channel. It became the motto of the fleet. People repeated it like a promise. Not conquerors, but children coming home. But even as hope filled the hearts of billions, there were shadows of doubt. The alien species that had claimed Earth were not silent. Across the galaxy, there were signs that they knew something was coming. Human outposts near their borders began to vanish. Communication networks detected strange signals, patterns that looked like warnings or challenges. Scouts reported glimpses of alien vessels near abandoned systems. Dark, enormous ships with designs unlike anything human eyes had seen. They didn't attack, but they watched as if studying humanity's movements. Some believed they were waiting. Others thought they were preparing. Still, humanity pressed forward. They had waited too long to turn back now. The return fleet continued to grow. Each ship tested, each crew trained, each weapon perfected. Scientists unlocked technologies hidden for centuries, left behind by generations who dreamed of this very day. They learned how to shield their ships from energy detection, how to phase through space-time, and how to bend light to move unseen. Soon, whispers spread that the new human fleet was unlike anything in the galaxy. Some called it godlike, others called it unstoppable. But most people simply called it the homecoming force. When the first section of the fleet finally launched, entire worlds paused to watch. The sky lit up brighter than sunrise as thousands of ships rose together in perfect formation. People stood in silence, hands on their hearts, as the great vessels vanished one by one into the endless dark. Each light that disappeared carried the hope of billions. The journey through the void wasn't short. Even with the technology humanity had mastered, crossing the deep between galaxies took years. Inside the ships, life continued as normal. People farmed, studied, trained, and dreamed. Children grew up hearing stories of the world they were traveling toward. Artists painted what they imagined Earth would look like. Some made music from old human sounds: rain, thunder, wind, laughter. Sometimes travelers gathered by the observation windows to watch the stars blur as they moved through folded space. It looked like streaks of fire flowing past, and in those moments, people would whisper to each other that maybe Earth was watching them back. Meanwhile, the fleet's scouts reached the outer systems near the old solar region. What they saw was beyond imagination. The stars there were surrounded by alien structures, rings of energy and floating fortresses that pulsed like living organisms. The aliens had not only taken Earth, they had turned the entire system into their territory. Every planet bore their mark. Every moon glowed with their technology. But the scouts didn't engage. They moved like ghosts, sending data back to the main fleet. What they found confirmed what humanity already feared. Earth was not unguarded. The aliens had built an entire defense network around it, protected by fleets of their own. The old enemies had never forgotten humanity. In their records, they still called humans the lost race, a warning of what happens when rebellion rises against them. When the human fleet received the data, there was no fear, only silence. Then the command from the central ship echoed through every vessel: "We go forward." From that moment, humanity began to move as one. The ships aligned their courses, engines humming like the heartbeat of a living being. The fleet stretched across light years, a river of metal and light flowing through the dark. Every pilot, every captain, every civilian aboard knew they might not return. But no one turned away. In quiet corners of the ships, people left messages for those who would come after them. They spoke to future generations. If they failed, someone else would continue the mission. Humanity had learned through pain that even when beaten, it never truly died. Days turned into months and months into years. The fleet grew closer to the solar system. Sensors picked up strange signals. Alien communication bursts filled with unknown frequencies. It was clear the enemy now knew they were coming. The first skirmishes began on the edges of deep space, small encounters between alien patrols and human scouts. But the difference in power was shocking. The alien ships once feared across the stars fell quickly to human precision. They were advanced, but not as advanced as what humanity had become. It was the first time in 500,000 years that the old enemies truly feared the name Terran. Word spread quickly across the alien networks. The race they thought extinct had returned. They had rebuilt, evolved, and become something far beyond what anyone remembered. As the fleet neared the final jump point to Earth, the commander sent one last message to all ships. It was simple. We return to the cradle of our kind. Let no hand of ours bring dishonor to it. We fight not to destroy, but to reclaim. And then in one blinding flash of light, the fleet vanished from the deep void and entered the system where everything began. The silence that followed was heavy. The scanners filled with data, the screens glowed, and there it was. The sun, the same golden star that had once watched humanity rise and fall. Its light touched the fleet as if welcoming them home, and there in the distance was Earth, glowing softly, alive and strange, wrapped in rings of alien metal. For a long time, no one spoke. Then across all channels, a single voice whispered the words that every human had waited to hear. We are home. The moment the human fleet entered the solar system, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. For the first time in 500,000 years, the descendants of Earth saw their original sun again. Its golden light washed over the ships, and through the observation windows people stared in awe. It wasn't just another star to them. It was the same sun that had once risen over mountains, over oceans, and over the cities of their ancestors. They had seen many suns in their travels across galaxies, but this one felt different. It felt warm, familiar, almost alive. Some cried quietly. Others stood still, unable to speak. It was as if every human heart remembered this light, even after all the centuries of wandering. And there it was, Earth, floating quietly among the stars, wrapped in layers of glowing metal and alien design. From a distance, it looked like a jewel, half natural, half mechanical. The oceans reflected the sunlight, but the continents pulsed with strange green and silver lines that traced across the planet like veins of light. Around it, huge alien structures orbited, guarding the world like silent sentinels. The moment was beautiful, but also painful. The humans had come home, yet the home they saw was no longer theirs. What once was blue and green was now tinted with colors no human world had ever seen. The aliens had changed it. They had made it their own. Inside the command ships, the leaders watched in silence. They didn't rush to attack. They knew this was not just another battle. It was a moment that would decide the meaning of 500,000 years of human struggle. The fleet spread out, surrounding the planet from a safe distance. Every ship was cloaked in energy fields, invisible to normal sensors, though the aliens had likely already noticed the disturbance in space. Soon, the alien defense fleets appeared. They came from the shadows, emerging from behind the moon, from the asteroid belt, from hidden points around the system. Their ships were massive, some shaped like living creatures, others like shards of crystal. They moved with elegance, not chaos, glowing softly in the darkness. For a moment, there was silence between both sides. Then the alien communication frequencies began to fill the air. Strange tones and pulses echoed through the speakers of the human ships. The language was complex, not fully understood, but the message was clear. It was a warning. They were telling humanity to turn back. The human commanders listened, then replied in a message that carried through every channel in the system. The words were spoken slowly, clearly, in a tone that needed no translation. We are the children of Earth. We have come home. The aliens didn't respond. Instead, their fleets began to move into formation. The sky around Earth filled with light as their weapons powered up. And so it began. The first flashes of energy lit the darkness, followed by explosions that rippled through space. The battle for Earth had started, not for conquest, but for history, for identity, for return. Human ships moved like shadows, phasing through dimensions and appearing behind the alien lines. Their weapons were precise, controlled, striking without waste. The aliens countered with waves of plasma and light so bright they turned space white for seconds at a time. The void around Earth became a storm of brilliance and silence. From the planet's surface, the aliens must have seen their skies on fire. The great towers they had built shimmered, their shields reacting to the cosmic battle above. For them, this was sacred ground. Earth was their holy world, and they would not surrender it easily. But the humans were not the same species they had once been. They had grown beyond what the old enemies could imagine. Their technology wasn't just advanced, it was instinctive, almost alive. Ships healed themselves after impact. Energy barriers formed out of thought and calculation. For every alien vessel that rose, 2 more were brought down by precision and unity. Even so, humanity didn't fight with rage. There was no hatred in their movements. Every decision was made with calm purpose, as if they were fulfilling something long promised. In the middle of the battle, one of the human fleets broke through the outer line and approached Earth directly. As they came closer, they began to see it in detail: the continents, the oceans, the vast structures built by the aliens. They saw fields of glowing forests made of living metal, mountains turned into energy harvesters, and massive circular temples that pulsed like hearts. But beneath it all, sensors picked up something older: deep underground layers, ancient ruins buried beneath the alien foundations. The readings confirmed what the explorers once discovered: human cities, preserved like silent memories under the alien soil. That realization hit every crew member deeply. They weren't fighting to take something new. They were fighting to reclaim something that had always been theirs. As the fleet entered low orbit, alien ships swarmed to stop them. But the humans had an advantage: knowledge gathered over centuries. They unleashed a wave of electromagnetic bursts that shut down the enemy's control systems. For a few moments, the sky fell silent, and in that silence, humanity advanced. When they reached the edge of the atmosphere, they saw something unexpected: blue patches appearing among the alien green. The planet's natural systems were still alive. Earth had survived beneath all the layers of control, waiting, adapting. It was almost as if the planet itself recognized its children returning. In the control room of the leading ship, someone whispered, "She's still alive." No one needed to ask who she was. Everyone knew. They were talking about Earth. The alien fleets reorganized quickly, trying to push back. More ships appeared from deep space, surrounding the human formation. The battle became chaotic again. Bright streaks of light cutting through the void. Explosions flashed across the sky, but the human fleets didn't falter. They moved like a single being. Every ship connected to every other through shared data and emotion. Even as the fighting grew fierce, humanity's orders remained the same: protect the planet, avoid total destruction. They didn't want to harm their home. Their goal was not to burn, but to cleanse. Hours turned into days, and the battle stretched across the system. Human forces captured alien stations near Mars and the Moon, cutting off their defenses. Slowly, the balance began to shift. The aliens realized too late that the humans had come prepared for everything. Then, something extraordinary happened. On Earth's surface, strange lights began to flicker in old ruins buried under alien structures. The ancient defense systems built by humanity before their fall were waking up. They had remained dormant for hundreds of thousands of years, waiting for the moment their creators would return. Across the planet, deep under oceans and mountains, human-made machines came to life. They sent signals into the sky, linking with the approaching fleet. It was as if the planet itself had opened its arms to welcome its children home. When the fleet received those signals, something stirred deep inside every person watching. Tears filled eyes, voices trembled. The moment was overwhelming. The machines of the ancestors were calling to them, guiding them back. The aliens panicked. They tried to destroy the reawakening systems, but it was too late. Energy rose from beneath the ground, forming protective shields around parts of the planet. The same technology that once defended humanity had now turned against their enemies. In one final coordinated movement, the human fleet pushed forward. Their ships surrounded Earth completely, cutting off any remaining alien reinforcement. The battle reached its peak, a storm of light so massive that even from other systems telescopes could see the flashes. When it ended, silence returned. The alien fleets were gone, scattered and defeated. The air around Earth was filled only with drifting fragments of broken ships, slowly falling toward the planet's gravity. Inside the human ships, there was no celebration, no shouting. Just quiet awe. They had done what no one thought possible. They had returned home. The command ship slowly descended closer to Earth's atmosphere. Clouds swirled below, soft and white, glowing under the sunlight. The view brought everyone to tears. Some reached out toward the glass as if trying to touch the planet through it. For the first time in 500,000 years, human voices filled the space around Earth once again. The radio waves carried simple words spoken from the flagship. To all who can hear us, we have returned. Humanity is home. On the planet's surface, the alien strongholds began to fall silent. Some of their leaders sent messages asking for peace, perhaps realizing that humanity's strength was beyond their understanding now. But the humans didn't reply right away. They needed time to understand what they had truly achieved. They hadn't just won a battle. They had brought back the story of who they were. They had come not to destroy, but to reclaim. The fire that once drove them from Earth had been replaced by something far greater, a determination to rebuild. As the fleet hovered quietly above the world that had birthed them, the sunlight began to rise over the horizon. It touched the blue seas and the metal towers together, blending both into a single glowing image. For the first time, humans and Earth shared the same dawn again, and in that light, one truth became clear. They were finally home. When the fleet finally reached the edge of the solar system, the quiet was almost painful. Stars glimmered in the blackness, distant and cold, but there in the center shone the old sun, brighter than any of them remembered. After 500,000 years, it still burned with the same warmth that once touched the skin of their ancestors. Every ship slowed. No one spoke for several seconds. People who had grown up under blue suns, red dwarfs, and twin stars now saw the one that started it all. The light hit the windows, and it felt like a memory coming alive. Some of the crew stood frozen, others whispered softly. Even the soldiers, hardened by centuries of war across galaxies, lowered their heads in silence. And then Earth appeared. It was both beautiful and heartbreaking. From a distance, it looked alive. Oceans glowing in soft blues, clouds drifting slowly, continents wrapped in green and silver light. But the green wasn't natural. It shimmered in unnatural patterns, as if the land itself had been reshaped by alien hands. The continents were covered with strange structures that glowed faintly in the dark. Long lines of energy connected oceans and mountains like veins. The home they had dreamed about wasn't just changed, it was claimed. A quiet voice came through the fleet's comms. So, this is what they did to her. No one answered. They didn't need to. Everyone felt the same mix of awe and sorrow. The fleet took up positions around the planet, surrounding it in perfect formation. Every ship adjusted its course in silence. The commanders didn't rush into battle. They knew this wasn't just about power. This was history repeating itself, but now humanity held the pen. And soon the other side responded. From behind the moon and the shadows of the asteroid belt, alien ships began to appear. Their hulls glowed like living crystal, each one shaped in a way that seemed to bend light. They moved slowly, forming patterns that filled the sky. Some were small and sharp, others massive and majestic. They weren't just machines. They looked like creatures born from art and war. For a moment, both sides faced each other across the silent void. Then a signal came through. The aliens spoke in tones and pulses, their message almost musical but filled with warning. Translators picked up fragments of meaning. Turn back. Leave this world. It belongs to the Order now, a human voice responded. Calm, steady, and proud. We are the children of Earth. We have come home, that was all. No threats, no promises, just truth. The alien ships began to move. Beams of light stretched across the darkness, and the first explosions followed. The battle for Earth had begun. The human fleets moved like one living being. They didn't fight wildly, they fought with precision. Each strike was calculated, each move balanced. Their ships slipped through dimensional folds, appearing and disappearing in flashes. The aliens countered with storms of energy that burned white-hot against the shields of human ships. Space lit up with fire and light. From the planet's surface, the sky must have looked like a storm of stars. Inside one of the command ships, people watched the live feeds as energy waves struck and faded. The commander spoke softly, almost like talking to the planet itself. We're not here to destroy. We're here to bring her back. Every person understood that. They weren't fighting for revenge, they were fighting for belonging, for the right to stand where their ancestors once stood. Hours turned into days. The human fleets pushed deeper into the system, disabling alien outposts near Mars and the Moon. Each victory came at a cost, but the losses didn't stop them. For the first time in 500,000 years, humanity's voice echoed through its birthplace again. Then came the moment that changed everything. One of the forward fleets broke through the alien defense lines and entered Earth's orbit. The planet filled their view, and for the first time they could see it in detail. The blue ocean still shimmered beneath the alien layers. Some clouds still drifted freely. The land below was strange yet familiar, but under those alien towers and glowing patterns, their scanners picked up something older, massive structures buried deep beneath the surface. Cities, roads, and energy cores built by humanity long before the exile. They were still there, silent and waiting. That discovery shook the entire fleet. It meant Earth had not forgotten. It had kept the memory of its children, buried but alive. When this news spread across the ships, people cheered, cried, even prayed. It wasn't just a mission anymore, it was destiny calling them home. But the aliens fought harder. They unleashed weapons that bent space and shattered matter. One human cruiser vanished in a burst of white light. Another was torn apart by a gravity wave. Yet the humans adapted faster. Their ships reconfigured mid-battle, their shields bending and healing like living skin. They had learned from every war across galaxies. Their technology didn't just use energy, it understood it. The fleets pressed forward again. Then, something unexpected happened on Earth's surface. Sensors detected sudden energy bursts from ancient locations, places once known as human cities. Underground, machines that hadn't moved in ages began to stir. Old systems reactivated. Power flowed through veins of buried circuits. Earth's ancient defense grid, built by humanity long before their fall, was waking up. The planet itself was remembering its children. Those reactivated systems began sending signals into space, connecting directly with the human fleet. They weren't just mechanical messages, they carried something emotional like a pulse. It felt like the planet was whispering, "Welcome back." That moment changed everything. People cried openly on the bridges of their ships. Some reached out to touch the glowing screens as if they could feel Earth's heartbeat through them. But the aliens panicked. They knew what those signals meant. They launched massive energy strikes toward the surface, trying to destroy the awakening systems. The human fleet moved instantly, forming a protective shield between the planet and the attackers. Ships burned, shields cracked, but not one alien blast reached the planet. Humanity had come too far to let that happen. Then came the final wave. The human fleets aligned in perfect symmetry. Energy fields connected between ships, creating a massive living network of power. It wasn't just technology, it was unity. Every person in every ship felt the others beside them, sharing focus, strength, and purpose. Together they unleashed a controlled pulse of energy that rippled through the system. Alien ships froze, their systems locked by interference. One by one they fell silent, drifting aimlessly. The few that remained turned away, retreating into deep space. Silence returned. The stars still burned. The debris of battle floated quietly, and in that silence the humans looked down at Earth, their true home glowing softly beneath them. Inside the command ship, no one spoke. Some smiled, some wept. The commander simply said, "We made it." As the ships began to descend closer, clouds swirled below like welcoming hands. Through the windows they could see both alien towers and old ruins blending together under the same sunlight. It looked strange yet somehow beautiful, like the planet was trying to heal itself. Then the fleet sent out a message to the whole galaxy. "To all who can hear this, we have returned. Humanity is home." The words echoed across space, reaching worlds that once thought humans were only myths. On the surface, the alien machines stopped moving. Some of their leaders sent out desperate peace signals, unsure what to do now. The humans didn't answer immediately. They just watched the sun rise over the planet that had once given them life. The light spread across the oceans and mountains, touching both metal and soil. For the first time in hundreds of millennia, the sun rose on a world where humans were watching again. And in that golden light, every person in the fleet felt the same quiet thought. Earth was not just a planet. It was family. It had waited for them, endured, and finally welcomed them home. They didn't need to celebrate or shout. The moment itself was enough. They had done what no generation before them could. They had brought humanity back to where it all began. Above the clouds, the fleet hovered in peace. Beneath them, the planet pulsed softly with new life. And somewhere deep below the surface, ancient machines hummed gently, like a heartbeat matching their own. The long exile was finally over, and humanity, for the first time in 500,000 years, was home again. After the long silence that followed the final battle, Earth floated quietly beneath the fleet. The stars were still there, the sun still shone, and yet everything felt different. The war was over, but peace had not yet begun. Humanity had finally come home, but now came the hardest question: what to do next? The fleets were still orbiting Earth, their silver hulls catching sunlight like mirrors. Below, the planet's surface shimmered with a mix of alien and human design. Metallic forests still glowed in green light, while deep beneath them the sleeping human cities of the past had awakened. Two civilizations, one that conquered and one that returned, were now facing each other on the same world. Inside the main command ship, a meeting was taking place. The leaders, explorers, scientists, and historians sat together in silence. No one seemed sure where to begin. The war had ended sooner than anyone expected, and now the future stood before them like an open book. "We can't destroy what's left," said one of the engineers finally. "The planet would suffer. Earth has waited for us. It doesn't deserve more pain," another voice replied, calm but firm. "But we can't just forgive what they did. They took everything, our land, our history, even our name." The room grew heavy with quiet tension. It was true. The aliens had turned Earth into their sacred home. To them, humans were long-gone myths. To erase them now would be easy. But would it make humans any different from their old enemies? That question hung in the air. Down on the surface, the alien strongholds were falling silent. Some of their machines still moved, scanning the sky, but most had stopped fighting. They were confused, frightened, and uncertain. They had never faced a power like this before, a force that didn't just destroy but returned. Human drones and exploration units began to land across the planet. They touched down on the soil of their ancestors, walking where no human foot had stepped in 500,000 years. Every soldier who stepped out onto that soil froze for a moment. The wind felt different here. The air, though thin and strange, carried a scent that felt ancient, like home. In the ruins beneath the alien structures, explorers found traces of the old world. Roads buried under layers of rock, buildings made of stone and steel still standing in fragments, and even carvings written in ancient human language. Some of those carvings told stories, of hope, of escape, of a promise to return. It was as if the ancestors had known this moment would come. Every new discovery brought silence and tears. The humans had left behind so much, and yet the planet had guarded their memory with quiet loyalty. As the days passed, communication between the two sides began. The aliens sent envoys, creatures with shining skin and calm, expressionless faces. They came not as warriors, but as messengers. Their language was complex, but their meaning was clear. They didn't want more fighting. They wanted to understand who these new arrivals truly were. At first, the human commanders refused to answer. The wounds were too fresh. But later, something unexpected happened. One of the younger crew members, someone born on a distant colony, who had never seen Earth before, spoke up during a meeting. "If we destroy them," he said quietly, "then what was the point of all we've learned? We left Earth because of hate and war. Are we going to bring that same thing back?" The room fell silent again. His words hit everyone deeply. For centuries, humanity had grown, changed, and evolved among the stars. They had learned to survive without cruelty, to build without conquest. If they ended this story in anger, then the circle would never be broken. And so a decision was made. Human ships powered down their weapons. Instead of destroying, they began repairing. Damaged alien towers were stabilized to prevent collapse. Broken landscapes were healed using advanced eco-technology. The goal was no longer revenge, it was balance. Messages were sent to the alien leaders offering peace talks. It was not an easy thing to do. Some humans protested, saying forgiveness was weakness. But others reminded them that true strength wasn't about how much destruction they could cause. It was about how much they could rebuild. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, small teams from both sides began to meet on neutral ground. on the same soil that once held the first human cities. The first meetings were silent, cautious. The aliens observed humans with curiosity. They had heard stories about the ancient species that once ruled this planet. But they never believed those stories were true. Now, they were standing face to face with them. The humans didn't come with pride or arrogance. They came with respect. They brought small gifts, samples of soil from other worlds, music from distant colonies, and recordings of the old Earth songs that had survived through generations. The aliens didn't understand the words, but the emotion in the sound touched them. Slowly, barriers began to fall. One day, something remarkable happened. A storm hit the planet, stronger than any seen in centuries. Lightning struck across the alien cities, and massive energy towers began to collapse. The alien systems failed. In that moment of chaos, human engineers rushed in to help. They worked side by side with the aliens to restore power, rebuild shelters, and save lives. When it was over, the aliens finally understood something. Humanity had not returned to conquer. They had returned to heal. After that, the tone of every meeting changed. The aliens opened their archives, revealing that they had long wondered about the mysterious first race that once lived on Earth. They hadn't meant to erase them. It had simply been so long that history itself turned to myth. Some of them even worshipped the lost builders of blue soil, without realizing those builders were human. Hearing this brought mixed emotions to the humans. Sadness, pride, and forgiveness all blended together. It was strange, but in that moment they finally understood. The past didn't need to be rewritten. It only needed to be remembered. The rebuilding began. Together, both species started restoring Earth to its natural beauty. The alien metal forests were reshaped into living green ones. The skies cleared. The ocean slowly began to breathe again. Ancient human cities, once buried deep, were uncovered and restored with care. For the first time in history, two civilizations worked side by side not for power, but for memory. The human fleet remained in orbit, but their presence became a symbol of protection, not domination. The people of Earth, both human and alien, began to share knowledge, stories, and culture. Songs from the stars mixed with melodies of the old Earth. Children of both kinds played together in cities that glowed under the same sun. And deep in the heart of the planet, the ancient systems that had once awakened now began to rest again. Their purpose was complete. The children had returned, not for war, but for peace. Many years later, when the last ship of the return fleet prepared to leave orbit, a broadcast was sent to every corner of the galaxy. It was simple and full of feeling. To every world that has ever felt lost, to every race that has ever been exiled, remember this. Home is not a place you take. It's a place you rebuild. We are the children of Earth, and we have learned that the greatest victory is peace. Those words spread across the stars, carried by time and memory. They became a part of the new history that both species shared. As the fleet slowly rose, sunlight reflected off their hulls, lighting up the sky like falling stars. Below, the new Earth glowed with life. Oceans sparkled blue again. Green forests waved gently in the wind. The metal towers of the aliens stood beside human structures, symbols of a new beginning. From the bridge of the last ship, a voice whispered, "We did it. We came back. Not to end a story, but to start a new one." And as the ships drifted farther into space, Earth turned slowly beneath them, whole, alive, and free again. The long journey was over. The pain of exile, the struggle for return, the anger of loss, all of it had transformed into something pure, understanding. Humanity had not just settled the score, they had rewritten the meaning of it. 500,000 years after they left, the children of Earth had finally learned the truth their ancestors could never reach. That power fades. War ends. But home lasts forever.